let's see what Sargon was saying up to the election, shall we? So we can have some context on his newest video.
I'm really excited. I really look forward to it. Because I just genuinely think it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, right, I don't even have any cope prepared. I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm like, well, shit. Like, I don't have anything. If Trump doesn't win, then, okay, my powers of observation are terrible.
So, that's where Sargon was at just prior to the election. Let's see where he is now that President-elect Biden is, in fact, President-elect Biden. Sushi Mom with 100 bits, Crowder, Cope for later. I clicked on it already. I have it right here. Thank you for sending the link, though. Is it the same link? I guess I should check if it's a different link, but I already have.
Let me leave this really quickly.
Thanks, though. I never get people who start a stream and there's nothing, they're just silent, they're not looking at the camera. I don't necessarily look at the camera all the time because my screen's here, so it's a little difficult. You gotta go back and forth. But, like, at least when I start the stream, I'd like to think I try and, get people's attention. Hello, everyone. And I understand at the very beginning of your stream, often people won't be there, which is why I do the screen and the music at the beginning, so it gives people time to come in. So by the time I start, I know there's already people here. I don't get it. Sargon, you have more subscribers than I've ever had, especially on my solo channel, but even on, like, the Hannah and Jake channel. Why don't you, like, have more production value, Sargon? More production value. Sushi Mom with 100 bits. Oh, by the way, I love you, Hannah, and love all of chat. You've all done a good job. Let's relish in the salt. Well, thank you. I appreciate you, too. You're the best. Thanks for coming to the streams, and thanks for being everyone's mom. Appreciate it. Tumek Von Raven with 200 bits. If you had 1 minute on private with Joe Biden tomorrow, what would you say? Ooh. I would probably have a discussion with Biden about bipartisanship and how trying to be overly bipartisan and not using all avenues of power at his disposal against the Republicans is going to cause him to get nothing done as president. And I would use, Barack Obama's presidency, which Joe Biden was obviously there for, as an example of, like, look, these people are not willing to come halfway whatsoever. You need to stomp them into the ground to get what voters want. And if you do this middle of the road shit, like, you're hurting the left cause. You're hurting Democrats. You're hurting people on the left, whether they're liberals or leftists, because you will get nothing done. That's probably what I would talk about.
Oh goodness, I think I'm live. Once again, it didn't tell me. But right.
Get ready for the cope, folks.
Can you see me? I don't know if you can. I assume you can. Let the cope commence. Yes. Yes, this will be a heavy cope stream. Which is, I guess, what you could call this banner that was flying over an Everton versus Manchester United football game. The world knows that Trump won. #MAGA. What would inspire someone to do that? I just find that really interesting. In a foreign country, they're like, we can see that you cheated. It's an interesting statement.
So Sargon knows that everyone is expecting him to come and justify himself in this stream, the first stream since the election, considering he was so adamant in a Trump landslide. So, he's got to come out swinging, right? He's got to come out and have a definitive statement like, why was I wrong? Why was I wrong about a Trump landslide? Sleepy Joe beat Donald Trump. How do I justify that? Or how do I somehow prove, if you're a crazy person, that the election's a fraud? You gotta come out swinging with your number one piece of evidence, right? And his piece of evidence that Joe Biden didn't win the election is someone flying a banner about Donald Trump winning over a football match somewhere in Europe, probably in the UK. Because as we all know, they don't let crazy people pay for banners and for people to fly over events with them. This is his best foot forward.
So I've seen the phrase used a lot, as you can see in the title of this stream.
There's nothing funny about
There's
the
no
tools of
evidence
capitalism.
of voter fraud in the US elections that have yet to be resolved.
He's saying this sarcastically, but he is correct. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud to any extent, which is why Trump's lawsuits have been getting thrown out left and right. Tucker White 94, 20 bits. Imagine if you started a video like Sargon, Hannah, and that's how Jake, Baja, Sarah, and I saved the West from those filthy... Oh shit, we're live. Yep. Jesus Christ.
Despite what the media will tell you, nobody has actually been declared president or confirmed as anything.
There's nothing funny about the tools of
Correct, technically speaking, but again, AP, like I mentioned, the Associated Press, has called every single election since 1849. That's a while, guys. 1849. Okay? This is not new. It's never been new. The actual official, like, what do they call it? They count the votes and then they certify the vote count. They have until, I think, November 20th or something to certify the vote count. That's always been the case. But never, except for 2000, where there was a whole bunch of fucky stuff going on in Florida, and that was down to one state, not like 3 or 4 swing states. Completely different scenario. And the vote margins are way different than they were. Anyone, by the way, who compares this election to 2000 somehow and are like, oh, well, Trump will take it to the court, all they're doing is showing that they do not know what happened in the year 2000 or what happened with the Al Gore thing. Because this is a completely different scenario. Carl. Can I call you Carl? I'll call you Carl. Carl, every single election in the modern world has involved a person winning based on the vote totals as they stand in the Electoral College relative to the state that those votes are cast in. And that gets certified somewhere around the 20th, sometimes before then. However, on election night, usually even, because this is a pretty crazy election. Things were very close, and we had a lot of mail-in votes to get through, which gummed up the stuff. But typically, we know who wins on election night or the next morning. And even though the votes aren't certified until, like, the 20th or so, it doesn't matter, because you can still see the vote totals as they stand on election day. Ooh, holy... Wow, okay, Central Committee, thank you for raiding. Wow, raiders, welcome to the stream. We're enjoying the MAGA cope. I do a lot of political streams on here. I do Chud Watch a couple times a week where we look at people like Sargon, John Doyle, bunch of crazy people, and basically dunk on them. So welcome to the stream. I hope you enjoy some more MAGA cope with me, and thank you. Everyone go. I'm sure if you're following me, you're following Central Committee, but if you haven't, go over to Central Committee, give them a follow. Really, really, really great content. Bard Block Moses with 100 bits. It's like the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl when one team is up by 30. It's not officially over, but it's over. Yeah. That's basically how it is. Every modern election has been called by the media. This isn't something new. So the fact that people like Sargon, people like John Doyle, people like Liberty Hangout, people like Donald fucking Trump are being little crybabies about this, and they're super mad that the media is doing a thing that they've been doing for over 150 years. Like I said, AP has been calling elections since 1849. This is not new. This is not a new concept. It's so frustrating to me that this is the year that they're frustrated about it, even though back in 2016 it got called for Donald Trump election night, and none of them on that were like, hey, well, it's not certified until the 20th. Okay? Whatever. I had to suck it up election night 2016. You guys need to suck it up today. Get used to it. Sleepy Joe's the president. Your candidate was so bad they got beaten by Joe Biden. Imagine how bad of a candidate you have to be for Joe fucking Biden to beat you.
That's right.
It's embarrassing.
And I hate this phrase. I find it really annoying because it's...
Yeah, this is a record for the number of viewers on this channel, by the way. Thank you again for the raid.
so flagrantly dishonest. There is such a wealth of evidence that is at least the very bare minimum enough to warrant...
In case anyone from the raid's curious, by the way, the hats are because when we do hype trains, I put on another hat for each level of the hype train. That's what the hats are.
An investigation. Each individual piece that I'm going to show you...
Towing24 says, comparing this to 2000 ignores the GOP sending their agents to assault vote counters, Brooks Brothers riot. Now they don't have to pay people to do it. Now they can just lie on Twitter. Yeah, like I said, oh, and thank you, Obowan, for gifting us up. Like I said, anyone who compares this election to 2000 and tries to be like, well, in 2000, you know, it went to the Supreme Court and it ended up being George W. Bush. Anyone who is comparing this election to 2000 has no idea what happened in 2000. This is not the same scenario. That was one state that was down to a very narrow margin, and the media was hasty in calling the election in the first place. This is not the case here. We're dealing with multiple swing states with larger margins, and the media, and I watched, you know, NBC, ABC stuff regularly during the election coverage because it was, you know, over days because of how long the count was taking because of the mail-in votes. And they were being incredibly careful because I'm sure they got a memo where they're like, hey, we're not doing a 2000 thing, guys. We're not giving MAGA idiots any chance to try and say we're being hasty on this. And of course, MAGA idiots are gonna MAGA, so they do so anyway, and you see them now being like, the media doesn't get to call the election. Idiots. No one's saying they do. They do get to report the projected winner, though. So they were very cautious. No matter how clear it was into like day 2 or 3 of the election that Joe Biden was going to win, they waited till the last possible second to call it. It's very frustrating.
Will warrant an investigation. I wasn't going to do a stream tonight. I'm actually really shattered and I've had actually a really rough day. I'll explain at the end. I won't get into it now, but it's
Jaffa for Hots.
I've got so many tabs that I want to go through. There's so much stuff that I really feel that we should at least be able to point to and say, look, you know, he went through it in this stream, because this is quite incredible. And I think good old Uncle Joe really had it down when he said it's not the people who vote that count, it's the people who count the votes. There's definitely...
This is a quote I've heard from a couple conservatives or right-wingers. Sargon isn't really a conservative. He's more just an outright fashy type guy. They're doing this quote from Joseph Stalin, which of course, like he just said, says, it's not the people who vote that count, it's the people who count the votes. Do Sargon and people who say stuff like this think that the vote counting apparatus in the states is controlled by Democrats? Like, I understand it's handled, like, by the state, right? So, like, if the state government is Democratic, then theoretically, yes, Democrats are in charge, but they're not the ones who actually, like, count the votes. Anyone can go and volunteer to be a vote counter or someone who works on getting the votes counted. They don't have a little checkbox that says, are you a George Soros certified Democrat agent? No, the vote counting has been done by both Democrats and Republicans. If at this point you are still questioning, like, the what's the word I'm looking for? The legitimacy of the vote counting process, you sound like a little whiny baby who... we're well past your team losing, but you will not accept it. It is so silly.
Something to that. That's definitely describing an aspect of reality, unfortunate as that might be, because I'm a mortal enemy of the sort of thing that
Drakewing, thanks for gifting us up.
I despise communism and fascism. I want them consigned to the dustbin of history, as it were. But when they say something that is correct, you can't simply deny it because they're a communist. Anyway, we'll begin with the clip of Joe Biden saying this.
Secondly, we're in a situation where we have put together, and you guys did it for our the President Obama's administration, before this, we have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Sargon, when Joe Biden, and I don't know if you know how English works, Sargon, you should, because you're English, when he says the most successful voter fraud organization in history, he doesn't mean an organization to commit voter fraud. He means an organization to combat voter fraud. Do you not understand how people speak? Or are you so stupid that you think a presidential candidate intent on subverting an election is going to outright, on a live stream, say, by the way, we're going to commit the most voter fraud. It's the best voter fraud. The best voter fraud team. Thank you, voter fraud team. I missed something. Whose did I miss? Antipodian Squid. Sargon talking about being relegated to the dustbin of history, and all I can think of is Jake's trash can. True. He's definitely that stupid. Also true. Slowdog52. Wait, so American Cancer Society doesn't cause cancer? I want my money back. Yeah. AIDS Foundation. Same shit. Tumek von Raven had a cheer. Where the heck is that? Where did it go? How far back is that shit? Okay, I can't find it, so if you're post it again, I guess. To be fair, Trump broadcasts what he's going to do. That's true. Trump is stupider than Joe Biden, though, believe it or not, so.
Secondly, we're in a situation
Now, I mean, to be honest with you, at this point, I do believe he would just come out and say it, because it seems the game is so rigged. But this is being claimed to have been. I mean, it's been taken out of a live stream he was doing, or an address he was doing, talking about institutions against voter fraud. Now, I'm not going to go into that particularly. Let's just assume that was a Freudian slip. You know, he was mistaken, and what he meant to say is an anti-fraud organization. They just happened to it just happens to have been a really poorly timed slip of the tongue, but you know.
It's not even a slip of the tongue, Sargon. It's so dishonest to say that. Like, if I'm talking about an organization that combats anything, I don't know, crime. This is my organization for, like, if a presidential candidate said, we have the best committee on crime ever, you don't assume that they're saying that it's a committee to commit crime. You assume it's like to combat crime. It's so disingenuous. I hate it. I hate it so I hate Sargon so much. YouTube, will you ban Sargon already? Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen if Sargon gets banned? He'll just be mad for a while. It's fine.
It could just be that maybe he's old and he just forgets he's not supposed to say.
Okay, I missed a thing. It said, to all Americans that make fun of liberals employing female drone pilots, what is a meme for you is a world-creating message for countries that depend on U.S. military power and influence. It's funny internally, but it does make sense to make baby steps in other countries. I don't think other countries' foreign policy is being dictated by American memes. Especially leftist memes at that. No one gives a shit about leftist memes except for us.
Say that bit. Who knows? But the thing is, there are some real questions about this. And this is where we get into the long grind of the things that are genuinely suspicious about this election. There is certainly evidence that would suggest, and in and of itself, demands further investigation. The place I would start with is the fact that Biden has, as I can see, broken all the electoral records. Joe Biden, the guy who accidentally said we've got the most extensive voter fraud organization in history.
It wasn't an accident, Sargon. That's a completely reasonable way to phrase what he
The
meant.
guy who couldn't get 20 people to turn up to his rallies.
Like I said, again, the rallies, they intentionally had very few people there and they had them social distance because of COVID. The thing that's happening, Sargon, the thing that's still happening. And I said this in the last video. Both this guy and Caitlyn Bennett are like, oh my god, he can only get so many people at his events. We told you people multiple times. Hey guys, I know you're saying that he doesn't have a lot of people at rallies, but there's two things you're not taking into consideration. First of all, a lot of people this election aren't voting for Joe Biden. They're voting against Donald Trump because Donald Trump is probably the most hated president in modern history. Like, even Richard Nixon, I think there were people who were like, Nixon, okay, he did some stuff, but whatever. But Donald Trump is legitimately a grating personality that people just hate. And secondly, like I said, Joe Biden and his campaign were specifically having events with like 20 people at them, intentionally. But every time you'd be like, oh, look at how many people we have at our super spreader event, Trump campaign rallies. Suck it, Sleepy Joe. And you've allowed yourself to get in this little bubble where you're all self-deluded to the point where you were shocked on the day that this got called because you don't understand where did all these people who voted for Joe Biden came from. They came from people who hate Donald Trump. It's not a difficult puzzle. It's one of those puzzles where you got to connect the dots, but there's two dots. It's, oh, Donald Trump's one of the worst presidents in American history. Joe Biden wins the election. How are these things connected? Ridiculous. This line of thinking really changes how I feel about the police homicide unit. Oh, because, yeah, that's just the police. PK the Lost with 170 bits. I think this makes me the stream boss. What a nice view. Thanks. Thanks for the support. Did I miss any more? I don't think so.
The guy who literally just existed. The New York Times wrote an article saying, we don't need anything from you, Biden, other than stay alive and exist as a candidate. This guy, the least inspiring guy in the world, got the largest share of votes ever.
Yes, once again, for the people in the back, because Trump is legitimately, even outside of his terrible policy decisions, even outside of what a moron he is, if you listen to him speak for 5 seconds, your brain starts to hemorrhage, and the pressure, the intracranial pressure, starts to cause you to have seizures. Everyone hates Donald Trump. Everyone reasonable hates Donald Trump. There are a lot of people who are like hardcore balls-to-the-wall Trump supporters, and don't get me wrong, Donald Trump got the second most votes of any presidential candidate in history. So we got a lot of problems we got to solve with these people who are just so out of their minds that they think Donald Trump is reasonable. But it doesn't change the fact that there are a ridiculous number of people who understand that Donald Trump is not only a moron, not only a psycho, not only a narcissist, but legitimately an existential threat to, like, our electoral processes and our way of life. It's ridiculous. Towing 24 every time I hear these people take rally size as a measure worth giving a shit about, and then there is a link.
And Daisy, will you tell us what man represents in his purest form? Yes.
Phallic symbol, phallic
There's nothing
symbol.
funny about the tools of capitalism.
Jesus Christ. PK the Lost with 107. Oh, I read that one. Cool. MMO Addicted. Hey, I hate my Twitter jester. If he was a parody account comedian, I'd love him. Sadly, he's real, so I hate him. Can we be sure this was not a huge social experiment? God aliens? I don't even know who you're talking about. Argonian Bum, thank you for gifting a sub.
Let me leave this.
Nope, that's not the one I wanted.
That's amazing. That's genuinely amazing. 74.8 million votes. So not only did he dunk on Obama, he dunked on him by nearly 5 million votes. That is amazing. And the thing is, Trump, I think, was it the second highest, like over 70 million? He beat Obama with his turnout. But Biden just happened to get that extra sort of 4 or 5 million votes on top. It's like, wow, that's amazing. You know, what the passion and engagement that people have for the electoral process at the moment. That's incredible. But I was watching Academic Agent's video. He just put this out today. Definitely recommend checking this out. Analyzing US election 2020 results and turnout data. He's highlighted some really interesting phenomena that we can see from the numbers, that the official government numbers. To be brief, what he's showing here in the highlighted lines is the turnout difference in these states. Now, in Nevada and Ohio, this is actually down by 7.3% and 1%. And in Arizona, Florida, Michigan, they're up, but not by a huge amount. In Minnesota, 14.5% up. In Pennsylvania, 14.6% up. And in Wisconsin, 20%.
A lot of that's, and this is what annoys me about this too. Sargon, a lot of the increase in voting, you're acting like the increase in registered voters, or not even registered voters, people who actually went out and voted, you're acting as if it's suspicious, as if it's like mostly Democrat, when actually, if you look at the ground game the Republicans had this election, they did an amazing job at registering new Democrats, or not Democrats, registering new Republicans, rather, sorry. It's one of the reasons I think they ended up winning, the Senate and gaining so many House seats. I mean, the Republicans just kicked ass this election at registering new right-wing voters, something that I think Democrats need to continue to work on. So the increase in voter turnout is not only the result of some, it's a nefarious... No, there's no nefarious plot. It's because, for one thing, people hate Donald Trump. They wanted to get him out of office, so you had people on the left, or even people on the left center, very, very motivated to go out and vote. And then you had ground game by the Republicans registering new Republicans going out and voting not only for Donald Trump, but for the down ballot races, which is why, again, Donald Trump is the second most voted for political candidate in the history of the presidency. Donald Trump, if you're claiming voter fraud is why Joe Biden won, then you would also have to concede that Trump's second highest electoral, or the second highest popular vote count, is also part of the fraud, as are all the right-wing wins in the Senate races, as are all the right-wing wins in the House, because these aren't all on different ballots. Everyone voted on one ballot. If it's voter fraud, why did the Democrats only take the presidency, but lost seats in the House and didn't win the Senate? Again, there's Georgia runoff races, I'm aware of that, but we'll see what happens there. If Democrats wanted to commit voter fraud, somehow, I don't know how you'd even do it at as large of a scale as you would need to win the presidency by this margin. It would be absolutely bonkers. You would need literal warehouses full of people being paid to fill out ballots that are somehow linked to, whatever, at some amount of, absolutely ridiculous nonsense. But, if you're going to call into question the presidency, then you also have to call into question the Senate and House races, which is something that they're not doing. In fact, I think Mitch McConnell just had a talk where he's like, Trump is right to question the presidential race, but we accept the results of the Senate and the House. And it's like, well, you can't do that, because if one's a fraud, they're all a fraud. It's so blatant, the hypocrisy that's being pushed forward by these psychos. It is so bad.
Higher
Hello, Kitty.
voter turnout.
Would you like to go open the window?
The previous elections than in 2016. That's amazing. That's genuinely incredible, isn't it? That is mass mobilization. How many hundreds of thousands, nay, millions of votes extra? This must be where Biden got his extra 4 or 5 million votes from.
It's also where Trump got millions and millions more votes than he got not only in last election, but compared to Obama. Adventure Faps, thanks for following.
That's right.
While we're here, Act Blue for Georgia. Yeah, there's a link to the Georgia, I believe, Senate runoff races. So yeah, donate to that if you want to help win the Georgia runoff stuff.
Right? I mean, where else is it going to have come from if not for this huge increase? Staggering. It's staggering. But
Tumak von Raven with 300 bits says, Polish government is one of the few ones that claim that Trump can still win. It makes me happy that Biden won just because of how salty they're going to be about it. Honestly, the salt's probably the best thing that's going to come out of a Biden presidency. I'm not going to lie.
But yeah, so the way that they came in, I think, is definitely of most significance. Graph, as Associated Press show, Graph shows thousands of ballots reported at once, overwhelmingly for Biden. There were chunks of 20 to sort of 100,000 that would just come in, and I could.
The 100,000 thing that they keep pushing is due to a typo. Hold on. 100K votes for Biden. If you hear any right-wingers talking about this, like, oh my god, there's 100,000 votes for Biden and it all came in at once, this is fraud. No, it's not. It happened because of a typo. I think there wasn't it Michigan? There we go. Here it is. Typo led to false post about Michigan votes showing up magically for Biden. You've probably seen the post that's like, oh my god, on Twitter, a lot of people have been pushing, oh my god, there's 100,000 votes and they were all for Biden. I think even Sargon's going to reference it here in a second. Where did it go? Shit. After weeks of warnings of potential voter fraud, the sudden purported overnight surge of more than 100,000 votes in Michigan, all for Vice President Joe Biden, sent social media into overdrive. The allegation was picked up by conservative social media posters, widely shared and eventually retweeted by President Donald Trump. The social media claims were accompanied with screenshots of vote tallies showing an additional 138,339 votes for Biden, but none for anyone else. The screenshot showed no timestamp nor indicated who had posted the vote tallies. Fact or fiction? We're fact-checking. Where did this come from? The memes were based on an apparent typo by a county in Michigan reporting local voting data. There's no evidence of voter fraud, particularly since the error was quickly corrected on a county election site. So that 100,000 votes that showed up very suddenly, it was a typo and it was corrected almost immediately, but a bunch of right-wingers who were looking for something to try and bring into question the legitimacy of the election quickly screenshotted that effect of the typo on the models, and then we're like, so what's happening here, even though it got taken out almost immediately. The right-wing playbook here appears to be, at this point, just try and throw as much shade and confusion into the results of the election as possible, regardless of the fact that there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud.
I could have actually gone and got video of people carrying in just boxes at 4 a.m. or somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m. at certain polling stations, in this case in Wisconsin, where you can see it just literally ramps up the graph. Whereas otherwise they'd come in at a fairly organic rate. You can see they both raise slightly in certain points where legitimate votes, it would seem, have come in. And then suddenly just 100% for Biden. Now, 100% for anything is totally suspect, and the
right, which is why when it turned out that it was a typo, it got fixed. So why are you talking about it days after it got fixed, Sargon? It's almost like you're being incredibly disingenuous and trying to throw, again, complete chaos into election that has no evidence of voter fraud. Weird.
Sort of thing, the sort of result that you get in North Korea. It's just the fact of life that even if someone is massively,
thank you for
popular,
subscribing,
you will
or
still
gifting a sub, rather.
Like a percentage of people who will, I guess, out of objection or whatever, go and cast their vote to the opposite. You can see that in any kind of metric. I mean, look at the likes and dislikes.
Oh, also the really high. This graph has been touted by Republicans a lot as well. Like, oh my God, look at how much it jumped for Joe Biden and it plateaued for Trump. What's happening? This has been covered a bunch, but I might as well echo the sentiments here because it's true. The reason this happened is because this is when they started reporting mail-in votes for swing states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, stuff like that. I don't know if you all remember this year because it's been a blur, but as it turns out, all year President Trump has been talking about how mail-in ballots are somehow fraud just by their mere existence, or that they're bad and that you shouldn't use them, even though he uses one, which is pretty funny. So right-wing people didn't do mail-in ballots. I think in some areas the discrepancy was as much as like 78% Democrats and the rest Republicans, a few independents here and there, but you know what I'm talking about. So, of course, and this was reported on because there was such a high amount of Democratic mail-in and early voting ballots that needed to be counted. Once they started counting those ballots, there was going to be a huge jump towards Biden. Everyone knew this was going to happen. The reason this happened in the first place was because in swing states with Republican legislatures, they made sure that they weren't allowed to start counting those votes until election day. Guys, if those legislatures had allowed them to start counting votes earlier than that, we might have had results on election night, and this all would have been much simpler. But of course, this was the intent all along of these Republican people, to try and drag this out, get this large jump for Biden late in the game, so they could then try and call into question the legitimacy of the election. This is their intent. This is not a mistake. This is a malicious intent on their part. It's ridiculous. Logarth, that line is higher than I am. True. Jousters then. Phosphophiliite. I'm phosphophiliite. I don't think I'll ever get that right consistently. Just gonna have to live with it.
Likes on a YouTube video. Like, there'll always be a small minority of people who are actually like, yeah, I hate this. Downvote. It's like, I mean, I don't think I have downvote videos, but only as a political act. But I would just click off a video if it was something I wasn't, I didn't know what it was and I just wasn't interested. I'd just click off it. I wouldn't bother downvoting it. So it's people who I would guess are invested in saying, no, I have made my principled objection, and I respect that. I think that's a worthy thing to do. Having a principled objection and voicing it is the heart of the democratic process. But it's weird how just 100,000 ballots come in and not one person has got that principled objection.
Again, Sargon, the thing you're citing was a typo. Isn't it interesting how right-wingers will put false information out here, outright lies, and then I guarantee Sargon's never going to come back in another video and be like, by the way, guys, it was already fact-checked and explained prior to him putting this video out. So certainly after the fact, even if it's explained to him, he's never going to come out and be like, by the way, guys, I was mistaken on this 100,000 vote thing. That was a typo that got fixed. I apologize for feeding you misinformation. He's not going to do that. Because it's not his job to feed these people accurate information. It's his job to try and push right-wing talking points, to try and push the narrative in a favorable direction for his candidates. It's fucked up. Say your name wrong, answers only.
It's just weird. Just really weird. Really, really makes me think. And that's, I mean, that in and of itself is definitely something to investigate. 100,000 ballots have turned up, all for Biden? That's a question. That's a really, really, that's a red flag has gone up there. We've already got a couple of red flags.
I'm taking the hats off.
Massive
I'm getting really hot and sweaty.
voter turnout in certain Democrat-controlled areas. Right, okay, that's weird. Most votes ever. Okay, that's weird. And then we have another red flag, which...
There's nothing weird about the most votes ever thing, Sargon, and the fact that you're trying to push that is ridiculous. Like, let's imagine for a second a scenario where Trump wins. He didn't win, but let's pretend for a second he did. And we had these same exact voting total numbers. Do you think for a second people like Sargon, people like Caitlyn would be bringing into question the fact that it's the most voters ever? If Trump would have won with these exact same voting total numbers, they would be like, wow, look, Donald Trump brought the most voters out in the history of American presidential elections. Good job, Donald Trump. They wouldn't question it for a second. It has nothing to do with the numbers and has everything to do with the fact that they lost. They're just mad they lost. That's it. It's not more complicated than that. Antipodian Squid, incite, not inform. It's the Sargon way. Yep.
Which is hundreds of thousands being reported all at once just for one candidate. Right, that's really weird. The statisticians...
Tribal Spiral with a very good point that I'm going to echo here because I agree. Tribal Spiral says, I think that even if the election fraud case is dismissed, there are multiple cases, but yeah, you guys should really start worrying about the millions of people that went out to vote for the Cheeto in a post-COVID world. Yeah, that's something that we absolutely need to talk about. What do you do when in your country half the population is just completely divorced from reality? What do you do when 50% of the population doesn't care about democracy, but cares about winning at all costs? What do you do when their motive is not to make people's lives better, but it's to own the libs? I don't know. I don't have an answer, and I wish I did. I wish I had the answer. I don't. It's scary. It's very concerning. I have no idea. Phosphophilite. Thank you for the 69 bits. Nice.
have said this is like flipping a coin and getting heads 100 times. I guess Biden is just that lucky. I guess
50% of votes isn't 50% of the population. The voters are the only ones that matter as long as we remain a democracy. I mean, as long as we're talking about electoral politics, the people who abstain from voting don't matter literally at all to politicians, period.
he's just so lucky, and it's nothing to do
Foss
with
is
the
also
massive
perfectly fine. I'm probably going to go with that then.
voter fraud organization he claims to have created.
Again,
nothing funny about
he
the
framed
tools of
this initially as a joke that he's like, oh, I know what he really means, but he keeps going back to it like it's a legitimate, like, piece of evidence towards voter fraud, when it's the opposite. It's him talking about having a committee entirely about avoiding voter fraud and spotting voter fraud. Sargon is such a desperate little bitch right
Funny
now.
about the tools of capitalism.
Just really lucky, right?
Two people. Enreath with 20 bits. Why are Republicans being obtuse about these two candidates? Why are Republicans being obtuse about these two candidates getting the most and the second most amount of votes in U.S. history? Literally every outlet was talking about record mail-in ballot returns and record early vote turnout because they lost, and they know the only way that they can turn that loss into a win is by calling into question the legitimacy of democracy as a whole. They lost democratically. And they don't care about democracy over winning. They care about winning over democracy. So they're willing to throw away the results of a democratic election as long as it means they stay in power. Daddy Sume with 20 bits. It's not that, Hannah. My mother isn't a bad person. She just gets lied to and lacks critical thinking skills. She doesn't like to think about this stuff. No offense, I don't care her reasons. Someone committing harm because they've been fooled doesn't stop the fact that they've harmed people. I don't care. There's reasons I don't talk to my parents anymore. Well, there are multiple reasons. But you know, like my dad's an absolute shitbag and an abusive outside of the political stuff, but that stuff certainly informs the political stuff.
But then you get the sort of local news reports. This is from newstalk1130.iheart.com. It's a local Wisconsin newspaper. Wisconsin clerks may have...
That's a radio station, Sargon. The 1130, that's a radio station. Do you know how to take information into your head and then synthesize answers? That's a radio station, you idiot.
unlawfully altered thousands of absentee ballots. Multiple sources tell the Daniel O'Donnell show municipal clerks and vote counters across the state simply filled out witness signatures themselves. Acting on false and unlawful advice from Wisconsin Elections Commission, these clerks may have inadvertently invalidated thousands of absentee votes. The statute is very clear. If an absentee ballot does not have a witness address on it, it's not valid. That ballot is not valid. Weird how they'd be literally instructing them to break the law.
I don't trust any single person, by the way, who's coming out of any of these things and saying one thing or another. If evidence actually comes out of these investigations, that's one thing, and I'd totally accept that. I'm a reasonable person that accepts evidence. But we've seen the number of Republican people who have come out and are super butthurt about the election, people like Sargon included, people that Rudy Giuliani has brought up on stage in front of the Four Seasons landscaping. There are plenty of Republicans willing to come out and lie on the record about voter fraud. So, fine, when these accusations come up, investigate them. That's completely fine. But I would not trust a single person who comes out and says that until such a time as that's investigated and evidence actually comes out. Because can you imagine someone like Sargon, who isn't someone who does YouTube videos, but they care about the Republican Party and a right-leaning ideology just as much as Sargon, and they happen to be someone who was involved in the ballot counting process or anywhere along the line on election day, and they see that they've lost. Do you think for even a second that there isn't someone out there like Sargon who's going to go, okay, I'll lie. I'll lie and say there was election fraud to try and help the Republicans. Just saying.
It's really weird.
People lie a lot.
Isn't it? Really gets the noggin jogging. And it just happens to be in that district that had the highest percentage turnout change, 20 extra percent. What a shock. I mean, the very fact that the people overseeing it...
That doesn't really make sense, Sargon, because even in the article you just read, it's not completely fraudulent ballots. It's people who turned in mail-in ballots without an address attached.
There's nothing funny
That's
about the
not
tools of
necessarily
capitalism.
fraud. It just means they forgot to write their address on the thing. That's a different thing, Sargon, than what you're alleging. Misunderstand. Thank you for subscribing at Tier 1 with a 2-month streak.
Had given them unlawful advice, that again, red flag, just shoots right up, doesn't it? Again, more evidence that some kind of foul play may be at work here, and it might be worth us actually getting an investigation done. I mean, just for no other, the totally non-partisan question: should the integrity of the elections be secured? Of course it should. Who's going to say no to that? Who's going to be like, no, we should have insecure elections, so the possibility of people cheating is much greater than it otherwise would be? Who's going to say that? Only the...
That's a straw man, Sargon. No one is saying people shouldn't make sure the election is secure. The problem is that we have no reason to think the election isn't secure. You guys are just mad that Trump lost. So stop straw manning.
kind of people I would suggest who have an interest in cheating.
And yes, the Republicans did shoot down election security bills. They could have passed them. They chose not to.
Say that. So I think that, you know, we as good moral democratic people who believe in the democratic process and the system, the integrity of the system, would want to safeguard the integrity of that system. When you have the overseers of the the polling booths advocating that people break the law, worthy of investigation at the very least, is it not? You know, I mean, I don't know what a good old Joe Biden might say about that. But I think that that's something worthy of investigating. And then you get the videos of them just appearing to fill out the ballots. I mean, it's very blurry, so you can't really see.
Sargon, it says right there, they're filling in light marks. You can see where someone marked it. If the machine can't read it, then you fill it in with more pen. That's not fraudulent. That's making sure the machine can read the ballot, you dummy. It says right on the tweet.
Exactly what's going on, but you can see that they're filling in the top of each of the...
Yeah, I don't know why his chat isn't replaying. Maybe he turned off the replay?
lists, which is the Democratic voter.
Yes, and the people who are doing it are observers. This is what I don't get. Guys, there are observers who watch this stuff. Republicans and Democrats have people who go and watch this process. It's fine. This has already all been observed. Towing24, Sargon is very stupid. Wisconsin allows people to cure their absentee ballots if they fix them before the close of ballots. Yeah. Also, there was I forget what it was. Basically, the Trump administration sued because they were claiming their people weren't being allowed in to observe, and then they took it to court. I think this was the day of the election or the evening, or it might have been the day after when they were still counting votes. And the judge asked the lawyer, hey, so do you have people in there counting votes? And the lawyer, in the most lawyer speak I've ever heard, says, we have a non-zero number of people in there watching the votes get counted. And the judge basically said, what are you doing in my courtroom? You allege that you have none, and now you're saying you do have people there? What are you even here for? They're being ridiculous.
The Democratic candidate, and you can see them just doing it. Just does she not realise she's been filmed? I mean, what's going on here? I'm not saying that this is proof of anything. This is evidence that something strange is happening that makes you want to know more and makes you ask more questions. Again, we're not saying that anyone has actually done anything wrong here because...
Oh, so you're literally begging the question. Weird. Unwreath, with 40 bits, when their lawsuit failed, their argument changed to the poll watchers weren't allowed close enough. Yeah, because initially I think it was 20 feet, and then they allowed them within 6 feet. 6 feet being, you know, for social distancing purposes. The thing seems to be like... and you saw this when Rudy Giuliani did the press conference behind the landscaping business the other day, which was very funny.
There's nothing funny about
basically, it seems like their expectation, which has never been the case in an election, that the people they have inspecting should be allowed to go up and touch the ballots and look at them and like, no, that's not your job. That's not your job. You're there to watch people count the ballots and put them into the counting machines. The ballots are the ballots, okay?
There's nothing funny about the tools
You don't get to go up and look at them and inspect them. They've been watched basically the entire chain of like what's the word I'm thinking of? Chain of custody. I've voted before, like in Michigan, for instance. Here's how it works. I go into line, I show them my ID, they give me a little card that I fill out information on, I take that card over to the ballot station, they put a ballot in a thing for me. They take that, I go and vote, and then I take that over to a machine. The ballot goes into a machine where it is locked in the machine, okay? It is locked up. No one can access this thing without alarms going off. Okay, then they take that machine and deliver it to where the vote counting is done. They then unlock the thing with special, like, key or code. I don't know how each machine works. And then they take those ballots to the table to be inspected and put into the machine for counting. Okay? The chain of command is secure everywhere along the point. It is assumed most of the time that the chain of, like, I'm losing the word again. The chain of custody is secure because each way along the process is either in the hand of the voter, locked in a box, or literally about to be counted via another machine. Like, where do you think this is? I don't understand where they think the insecurity is.
I haven't got any proof, concrete, that I could say, point to in a court of law and be like, yeah, this X person did Y act, therefore Z crime. But what we have is lots of evidence that definitely warrants further investigation. And I think that this, like, I think questions should be answered. I don't think we should just carry on. But anyway, apparently, I haven't heard of this site called Just the News, so all of the others I've no problem with. This one I don't know, but let's just see what they have to say. Administrative changes in Wisconsin election put tens of thousands of votes in question. From allowing clerks to fix spoiled ballots and...
Daddy Sumo have 20 bits. We must secure the chain of command, Hannah. Also, my previous bits. Oh, I missed some. Sorry. Let me go back. Daddy Sumo, I'm asking you, as a lawyer of the bar in this jurisdiction, do you have observers in that room? Yes. What are you doing here, then? Yep.
Permitting voters to escape ID rules.
I like that in these, Sargon is not showing the actual sources of the articles he's reading because they're all probably from, like, crazy right-wing news sources, so he crops it out.
Wisconsin election officials took actions that were not authorized by the legislature. That's interesting. So apparently they permitted local county election clerks to secure spoiled ballots by filling in missing addresses, which we covered earlier, exempted as many as 200,000...
Daddy Sume with 20 bits. I already read that one. Sorry. It was someone else following. Thank you for following.
Citizens from voter ID rules, allowing them to claim COVID-19 panic caused them to be indefinitely confined and failed to purge 130,000 names from outdated voter rolls as required by law. Well, we'll get to those people who voted.
Just the News. Let's look at Just the News. That's the source he's using. Just the News.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Oh yeah, this seems like a very unbiased news source. Pence, it ain't over till it's over, and it ain't over. Fossey held Zoom call with Gwyneth Paltrow, Kim Kardashian, and Ashton Kutcher, Katy Perry on COVID-19. China won't congratulate Biden. Yeah, this seems like a very reasonable center-of-the-road website that doesn't have an agenda at all, Sargon. I can see why you take them with all sorts of legitimacy.
Who you might be really genuinely impressed at the act of will that it takes for some of these...
Windchanter got gifted an entire stereo system today. Have some bits. That's cool. Hope it's a good stereo. That's neat.
Civil War veterans to have gone out and voted.
Oh my god, the dead voter thing. Okay, guys, when you hear dumb right-wingers, I shouldn't say dumb. Sargon isn't dumb. Sargon is evil. Sargon is a manipulator, and he's trying to control the narrative and push it in a certain direction to try and delegitimize the vote that his guy lost. Which is funny, because he's not from America anyway. But anyway, when people talk about dead people voting, here's what happens. Your name is John Smith, okay? You live in Detroit. You're 23 years old. You cast your ballot. You put it in the thing and it goes into the system. The system is confused because there's another John Smith who was registered and his birth date was in 1902. Right? But for some reason he's still on the voter rolls. The computer then confuses John Smith, the 23-year-old, for this old man, and in your thing puts his birth date as your birth date, even though you are the one who legally voted. They somehow accidentally transpose your birth date with the dead person's birth date. It doesn't mean a dead person voted. It means the computer system did a bad job at differentiating this John Smith who lives in Detroit from a John Smith who lived in Detroit decades ago who died there. That's what these people are complaining about. Basically a clerical error along which no one illegally voted. It's just a computer issue. That's what these people are complaining about. So whenever you hear Republicans complaining about dead people voting, call them idiots, because that's what they are.
So, I mean, let's not take that away from them. But again, two more red flags there. Again, just an investigation. That's all I would like to see. I want answers to this. Why were these things allowed to happen? Then, of course, you have the votes that kept getting found in the rubbish. There was votes found dumped in a desert. There were votes literally found in a dumpster. And there was a video of them going, "Oh, look at all these Trump votes found in a dumpster."
Oh my God, he's pushing this lie too. The dumpster thing. There was a postal worker who dumped a bunch of mail, and in it were mail-in ballots. We don't even know if these ballots were filled out or if these were ones that were being sent to voters to be filled out. But every manipulative, lying Trump voter is like, they were all Trump votes. How do you know that? That information was never released. They were in the envelopes. No one knows. No one knows what these things were. They were all Trump votes, though. I heard it on Breitbart. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. A mail person did throw away a bunch of mail, and there were mail-in ballots in them. I think there was like 10 or 12 or something along those number. Ooh, 12 votes. But no one knows what they were. They don't even know if they were filled out, much less who they were filled out for if they were.
But this is just one example of it. This was in Pennsylvania, but this has happened in various other locations. Again, who discarded the ballots? I mean...
Foss says, I call conservative idiots. Good job.
How is that not election tampering in and of itself? Like, we know someone must have put these mostly Trump ballots wherever, in a rubbish bin, wherever. Someone must have done that. Are there any security cameras? Can we figure out where these votes have come from? Are they allowed to just take...
The step of 1,000... I'm just going to call you 1,000 Eyes. 1,000 Eyes with 50 bits says, I'm glad cats can't vote. I think my girlfriend's cat is libertarian.
The votes out of the...
Lupine, what political party are you a part of? You're a Republican. You're getting kicked out of this house.
Voting halls. There are so many questions. There's so many red flags. This, again, yet another piece of really solid evidence that at the very least, an investigation needs to take place. Like, genuinely shocking. Then you get the Project Veritas videos and the whistleblowers where you've got postal workers who are literally coming forward and saying things like, oh, late ballots are being processed for illegal counting because they're backdating them. So, they can claim, oh, no, these arrived on the 3rd rather than the 4th or whatever the date was. And so you're, again, in...
Enreath with 20 bits. Republicans are literally setting up unofficial ballot boxes around California and refusing to remove them, but Dems and mail-in votes are sneaky. Yeah, guys, there's an old saying that says never attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance. The opposite is true in regard to conservatives and Republicans. They are consistently taking malicious steps and then, be like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. No, they're just a bunch of sneaky fucking liars. Towing24, the actual story Sargon is bitching about was done by a Q bootlicker, totally a guy on Joe Biden's paywall. USPS worker investigated for throwing out mail is QAnon follower. Good job, Sargon. You're nailing it. You're absolutely nailing it. Oh, good. My neighbor's going to mow the lawn at 6 p.m. That's cool. And it's completely... Look how dark it is outside, and he's going to mow the lawn. Lupine is clearly a neo-communist, fascist, libertarian. Yeah, that all tracks. Not oxymoronic at all. DM Trey, hey Hannah, just got off work. Welcome, DM Trey.
Inflating.
We're probably almost done with Sargon, by the way. This is an hour, 40-minute stream, but he just ends up repeating himself and trying to push forward Claims of voter fraud where no evidence currently exists.
Number of ballots that are valid. Just why would you do that? Who's the person instructing them to do it? Where did they get their orders? I think this is worthy of investigation because that is, as they say, illegal. Again, another red flag. What, we're up to like 6 or 7 red flags, and we're about a third of the way through what I've got to go.
Oh my god, I didn't even notice. Do you guys see the source on this fucking video? It's Project Veritas. So this is definitely bullshit.
Go through. So, then you get this one. We'll listen to this video because this is just like...
If all this wasn't enough, in Antrim County, ballots were counted for Democrats that were meant for Republicans.
And then they fixed it. They fixed it. They then set them to Republicans. I read about this on the night. Baja Blast talked to me about it.
Causing a 6,000 vote swing against our candidates. The county clerk came forward and said tabulating software glitched and caused a miscalculation of the votes. Since then, we have now discovered that 47 counties use this same software in...
Do you have any evidence that there was another glitch, or do you just have evidence that the software glitched once and that the software is also being used elsewhere? Oh, they're just using it elsewhere, but there was no evidence of other glitches? Weird.
In the same capacity. Antrim County had to hand...
Right. Now, that is surely enough to warrant an investigation. Some kind of investigation to... I mean, I'm just saying, right, A, I find it hard to believe that the software doesn't have some kind of error tracking mechanisms within it. And B, and this is the really big one, right? Counting votes is merely addition. There is no other calculation. You don't have to divide it by anything and, create some sort of, I don't know, fractal map or something. There's some giant mathematical formula. No, it's +1. That's all you do. If vote for candidate A, +1 for candidate A. If vote for candidate B, +1 for candidate B. It is so simple, a child could program the software to do it. I mean, I started programming in QBasic, not even QBasic, it was just called BASIC, back on an Amiga 500 when I was like 10 or 12 years old, something like that. And I remember, making these crappy programs. And so it's just really suspicious. And all 47 Michigan counties use the software. Michigan being, only 3.9% up. So not even a huge deal in that particular county by the numbers. But...
Okay, so doesn't that fly in the face of your claims, Sargon? Sargon, if you're claiming that massive voter fraud is why that there's a huge turnout change in some places, shouldn't this place that you're claiming has voter fraud based on the software that glitched once and they caught it almost immediately? Why would it only be up 3.9%? It's almost like this is completely disparate events that you're trying to cobble together with red strings on a board into some sort of conspiracy. You absolute jackass.
Either way, it doesn't matter, does it? It's still illegitimate. But most concerningly, this is being used in, apparently, we got a problem in the chat, said 28 other states. Very suspect. Very suspect. How can software glitch 6,000 votes?
I'm not a computer person, but anyone who's used literally any computer program in the history of computer programs knows that sometimes things glitch for reasons you don't understand. I don't know what it looks like under the hood. I took a coding class once, didn't do a great job. But it doesn't change the fact that sometimes things glitch and things happen. For one reason or another. It could have been the software having a problem with reading the ballots. It could have been a problem with I don't know, some variable that wasn't in the right place. I don't know. But Sargon, whatever the problem was, they recognized it and corrected it quickly. No other such glitches have been detected.
And the thing is as well, many of the states that have yet to be called, I mean, the votes, 6,000 votes could swing the state either way, so...
Is there a single state that's the case this year? Certainly not Michigan. Michigan was far enough away where 6,000 votes wouldn't make a difference. Pretty sure it's the same with Pennsylvania. I think Georgia was pretty darn close. Not sure by how much, though.
It's not. It doesn't even have to be that high.
It wasn't even with the software. It was human error. Jesus Christ.
Tools of capitalism.
So they're bitching about something that was an isolated incident that couldn't possibly be replicated because it was some idiot doing something wrong. Jesus. Towing24 with 20 bits. Do I even need to point out that Sargon and other wingnuts would never let the government raise their taxes so the state could afford better voting machines? Oh yeah, they're complete hypocrites. It's ridiculous. Like people mentioned earlier, the Republicans refused to vote on or shot down voting security bills during the Trump administration. Like, guys, you didn't seem to care about this 2 years ago. All of a sudden you care now that you lost the presidency. Weird.
A number at this point. But it really, again, something that should be investigated. Really suspicious. Like, 7, 8 red flags in, and we're still going. Then you get other election workers who say things like this.
Michigan. Just last night in Oakland County, we found 2,000 ballots that had been given to Democrats that were Republican ballots due to a clerical error, and this took place in Rochester.
She just said it was due to a clerical error, Sargon. Look at this face. He thinks he's fucking nailing it right now. Oh no, a clerical error gave 2,000 votes to the wrong side, and we fixed it. This proves the election is a fraud. It doesn't. It doesn't actually. I do need to oil this, by the way. I know, I'm sorry. I know it's squeaky. I'll figure something out.
Chester Hills.
Get
In
some
Wayne
WD-40 or something.
County, Republican poll watchers were denied their legal right to monitor the election and purposely kept in the dark, both literally and figuratively, with poll workers blocking windows and padlocking doors. There are hundreds of reports of our poll watchers being intimidated and unable to do their job. There was a major software issue in Antrim County that we have concerns could have caused problems in...
We'll stop there because it's basically all the same kind of problem, but you can see exactly the problem there. Why would poll watchers not be allowed in? There was a court judgment about this that they just ignored. The Republican, one Democrat poll watcher is supposed to be at each one, as I understand it,
and they were.
Nothing funny about the
see each
tools
ballot.
of capitalism.
Enreath with 20 bits, the best way to commit election fraud is to steal votes and then immediately give them back. True.
Something like that. And the Republican ones just went in. As you said, they were intimidated, and a bunch of ballots were just...
Which was it, Sargon? Were they not allowed in or were they intimidated? Which one was it? Just curious, because you seem to contradict yourself there.
Counted for the other side. And again, the weird thing about all of these glitches and like clerical errors and all that is they only go one way, don't they?
No, they don't. There were multiple instances on election night of glitches counting votes towards Republicans and then getting corrected towards Democrats. Clerical errors exist, Carl. Carl, you ran for office and lost. You should know how voting works. Clerical errors happen. They get corrected. That's part of voting in a country of 300-something million people. There are going to be clerical errors along the way, but they get caught and they get corrected, and that's fine.
They're never clerical errors in Trump's favor. It's so...
That's completely untrue. Like I said, there were clerical errors in Trump's favor on election night and the days following. It happens on both sides.
So strange. It's just, what a coincidence. It's flipping a coin 100 times, and every time it's landing on its edge, and Joe Biden's like, I guess I'm just really lucky, guys. It really makes me think. Again, another red flag. More evidence that something suspicious is going on. Why would they behave like this? Why would they behave like... I should have got the video up of them literally boarding up the windows so people can't see it. Why would they behave like that? If you want to transmit that you are having...
Sargon. There are Republican poll watchers, count watchers, whatever you want to call them, in every single place. The only legal thing that came up was them claiming they should be allowed to get closer, which they won, by the way, and then they were allowed within 6 feet. There are Republican poll watchers everywhere, and the implication also that the people actually counting the ballots are all Democrats is incredibly stupid, because it's not the case. Anyone can go and volunteer to work the polls. And I guarantee a decent number of the people counting votes are Republicans. It's a bipartisan effort, Carl. The fact that you're bringing this into the question is just because you lost. You need to stop with the cope and start to accept the loss. The longer you drag this on is just going to hurt you more. Please stop. Not for my sake, because Donald Trump's not going to be the president in January. I'm fine. I'm doing fine. You, on the other hand, are clearly taking this very, very poorly. And until such a time as you start to, like, get to the acceptance stage, I don't think you're going to be okay. I titled this episode, like, Chud Watch, MAGA Meltdown, Stage 1 Denial. Because that's where we are. I'm very curious what the videos over the next couple months are going to be like as we kind of move through the stages. And we'll do follow-up episodes that'll be different things. I'm curious when the anger will come. I'm sure there'll be angry videos from Sargon where he's like, this is bullshit. This is ridiculous. Good job, America. You're I'm sure it'll be funny and annoying. But we'll do that then. And then eventually we'll probably get to acceptance and he'll get into his normal groove of just, shit-talking Democrats. Which is fine. I also like to shit-talk Democrats. So that'll be a good time. I think I'm done with Sargon for the day, though. That's 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes too long of his friggin' cope. It's absolutely ridiculous that he's getting away lying about this stuff. It's crazy. Here's an AP news source, by the way, on that thing being... Clerk error behind county resulting favoring Biden in Bel Air, Michigan. A clerk's error in a small Republican-leaning northern Michigan county earlier this week led to the reporting of unofficial votes results that favored Joe Biden, state officials said. Questions were raised after Antrim County, northeast of Traverse City, first reported a local landslide for Biden in his race against Republican incumbent Donald Trump in the presidential election. The Republican National Committee included it among several allegations of voting irregularities in Michigan that favored Biden and Democrats, but Michigan's Department of State said Friday that Antrim's county clerk accidentally did not update software used to collect voting machine data. So they literally just didn't update the thing. Fun. So Sargon, you keep doing what you're doing if you want. It's not going to make a difference. Courts are already throwing out like lawsuits that the Trump campaign's trying to do. They had a press conference in the back of a landscaping company, which was hilarious. It's just not going to happen, Sargon. I hope you accept it soon.